Today I would like to show you how to integrate with GraphQL endpoint using React Query. Normally you would use something like useQuery or Apollo client to integrate with a GraphQL endpoint. But since we already used React Query, we could use it again here to have this universal way of accessing data. React Query can fetch data from any remote location, and usually it's used to fetch data from REST API, but it can be also used to fetch data from a GraphQL endpoint. But before we dive into the details of integrating, let's first see how we can make the simplest possible request to a GraphQL endpoint and how we can use the tools we already have. So for example, the fetch API that's built in the browser to do a valid request that can be recognized by a GraphQL server, so that provides data back. As before, I will be using Dev2 API, but Dev2 only provides a REST API. They don't provide GraphQL API. But luckily, there is this another project we already seen on this channel called OneGraph, and they provide GraphQL endpoints for popular APIs. So they convert it to GraphQL so that you have this like a single starting point, and from the one place you can like integrate with all those different APIs. So you don't have to log in. You can just go to GraphQL and you have this explorer. So you see all those services they integrated with, and all of them are available as GraphQL endpoints. And we are interested in Dev2. So if I just open this and articles, notes, and titles and tags, let's say, and I run it, I see that I can fetch all the articles. It fetches the currently, I think they are the trending articles from Dev2. So now let's see how we can trigger this query using just the fetch API. So we can see what OneGraph is doing behind the scenes. So whenever I run this, they send a request to this endpoint. So we can just get this URL, snippets, new snippet, and let's say GraphQL request. And we could do fetch, built in. We don't need this. Let's convert it to JSON and let's just display the data. So it won't work because there is this like coarse issue. OpenGraph whitelists a localhost 3000. We need to have this script run from a website at the localhost 3000. So we can just do a small trick. So anywhere in my directory, let's create an empty directory, and if I serve it on port 3000, so now if I go back here and if I open 3000, I don't see anything, but we can go to our snippets, and now if you run this script from the browser, it should display something. Okay, so fetch by default, it does the get request, but if we want to integrate with GraphQL, we will do post. And then for the headers, we are sending application JSON, and finally we need to send some body. So, and this will be stringified. So there will be a query, and here we will send our queries. So for now, let's keep it empty. Yeah, so we got something. We got some errors. So if I just get this string and I go back here and I paste it as a string, so we are sending this query as a string on one line, like so. So we are fetching using the fetch API on this URL, the same as the Explorer from OneGraph. We need to use post and then JSON, and we are sending the thing that's being written in this editor as a string. So if we send, here at the bottom you see that actually we are getting the same results. So we are getting those articles from dev2 via GraphQL. So we just did the most simple request, and that's how GraphQL integration works. It's just sending requests, the post requests to some URLs, to some endpoints, and it sends the query as string. So with that in mind, we can now integrate this knowledge into using React Query and to integrate this fetcher. So the first thing would be to create a React.js application. You can use any tool you want, create React app, Next.js, but I will be using my own tool, Kretes, and let's call this dev2 React Query, dev2 GraphQL, and you can use a template, React template. So this will generate a React.js application. Yeah, so the React.js template in Kretes configures React Query for you. So if we open that and if we go to client, we will see that the initial setup of React Query is already provided to us. So we don't have to worry about that. And we can just focus on doing this GraphQL requests. So the template application also shows us how to use the request function that will be passed to the useQuery, as we've seen in the other videos. So now we could just replace that with what we created in the browser. So let me just grab this code and we can use it here. So I will remove that, and because we are, say, any. So now the problem here is that if we trigger this again, we see that this data is nested. So it's data, dev2, articles, and nodes. So we need to destructure it. So we can do this in the request. And we can, first of all, destructure data, and then dev2, then it's, what is it, articles, and finally nodes, and this will be the result. And we will be returning the results. So now here in useQuery, the data should be an array of articles. We can just display it like that. And let's start the app. And let's open port 5544. So this error, you don't have to worry about that. It just says that you didn't start the database, but you can use Kretes without database. It just informs you that it couldn't connect. So if we open that, so it doesn't fetch. So now we have this problem, the course problem. And to overcome that, we need to start the application on the port 3000, because that's the port that OneGraph is whitelisting. So let's start again. So now it's on the port 3000. So if I open, I have the data fetched from dev2 via this GraphQL endpoint. We are using just the fetch API to do the request, and then everything else, like the caching and all the refetching, is being taken care of by the React query. So this way we are matching the feature set of something like useQuery or Apollo client. But the advantage is that we are using the single library, the React query library. So we have this like a unified way. We can use it either for REST APIs or for GraphQL APIs, and it's always the same approach. So now it works. We could make it a little bit more pretty. So I will just quickly copy the component we used in the previous video. Created this article collection component, and we would need to have interface. So let's say article. So we will have title, string, and tags. It'll be array of strings, something like that. And here we will have tags. So now if we say article collection data and we refresh, we have the previous styling, and let's make it a little bit more pretty. So here, let's remove that. Yeah, as before, when we were integrating with the REST API of Dev2. And now we are integrating with a GraphQL endpoint using OneGraph, and React Query can be used to do this GraphQL request. So we could improve that. For example, we could make this query nicer. So we could use this some helpers so that it's displayed in a nicer way in our editor. I will leave it as an exercise for you. And in the next video, I will show you how to improve it even further. So I will show you this cool idea of persisted queries. That's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.